Hi. To start this episode, I want to share with you a beautiful tea house my wife found for me in Nanjing in China. The people who work here are very friendly, and they make sure you always have hot water for your tea so you stay warm during these cold winter days. The very spot where I sit now is my favorite, and I can linger here for hours. It is a perfect location to read and work and to enjoy some quiet time. And it has a special view, because it looks out on the tower of the famous Bao'en Temple or Porcelain Tower. It has been an important religious place since it was built for the first time in the 15th century. In this episode, I've planned multiple visits to the Bao'en Temple, and I'll later take you there to reveal some of its beauty and share a bit of its history. And as always, I have of course prepared several books for you. This time, my book selection was sparked by a delightful surprise gift from my wife. It is this bangle that I love to wear. On the outside, it has the famous 6-syllable Sanskrit mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. However, it is what is written on the inside surface of the bangle that stirred my curiosity. It contains 260 Chinese characters, which represent one of the most essential Buddhist sutras in the Mahayana tradition. This short and profound text is called the Heart Sutra. The bangle initiated a journey in my head and a real physical journey to China to delve deeper into this text and to take the time to explore Buddhism more profoundly. My curiosity for Buddhism, as you will see, also provided me with an effective way that helps me to better calm the busy and sometimes chaotic thoughts in my head. Something I did not expect to happen. As always, happy to share with you what I read and what I learned. Welcome back to Bold Books and Bones. Throughout the years, my reading on Buddhism has been sporadic. What I found compelling about it is that its founder, Siddhartha Gautama, did not offer a set of dogmas to follow. He shared propositions for each individual to investigate for him or herself, and in this way promoting an attitude of investigation, critical thinking, and personal responsibility, instead of blindly accepting teachings or beliefs solely on authority. This fundamental principle gives me a cherished sense of freedom in thought, which aligns perfectly with my preferred approach to handle information. That is for sure an important reason why I gravitate towards Buddhist literature. As promised, I'm taking you on the initial of several visits to the Bao'en Temple. I never visited the Bao'en Tower in winter before. The cold weather added a unique beauty to the temple amidst the wintry landscape. The tower has faced destruction multiple times in history due to wars, rebellions, and revolutions. Yet it consistently emerges anew on the same spot. Its latest incarnation from 2015 takes on an ultra-modern form, tailored to the demands of the 21st century. At the heart of it all, right under the tower, an important Buddhist relic was unearthed in 2008. It is said to contain a part of the skull of the Buddha himself. I'll show you more of the inside of the Bao'en Temple later on. Let's return to the Heart Sutra now. It is an essential text to the Mahayana branch of Buddhism. It is a short dialogue between Avalokitesvara, who is a follower of Buddha and who embodies compassion, and Shariputra, who is one of the Gautama Buddha's two main disciples. The theme of the conversation explores a thought-provoking concept, namely that everything is emptiness. While I'm not a Buddhism or Heart Sutra expert, it is evident that the concept of emptiness carries not just a deep spiritual significance, but it also holds profound philosophical implications. Let's therefore have a look at what the text contains. There is actually one question asked. How does one practice the perfection of wisdom? And here are some excerpts of the answer. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, mental formation and consciousness are empty. And a bit further we read, there are no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, and also no attainment. Because there is nothing obtainable. There exists various English translations allowing for nuances in the words you might encounter. I find these words intriguing, and to me they somehow contain a captivating beauty within them. Imagining a reality where there is no sound, no scent, sight, sensation, or even consciousness is a challenging mental exercise. That is why certain branches of Buddhism integrate this concept into their meditation practices. It then becomes a deliberate effort aimed at exploring the profound nature of emptiness. And through this mental work, they try to reveal and experience the meaning of these ancient words. But what does it all mean? What is meant by form is emptiness? And why is this short text so important and influential to Buddhist communities in India, in China, in Korea, Japan, Tibet, and in many other places? When such questions arise, it's always a pleasant moment to delve into books on the subject. And I found several English books written about the Heart Sutra. I chose this one, The Heart Sutra Explained by Donald S. Lopez Jr. This book was first published in 1988. I started with this book because it is written by a Western scholar who shares with us his insights based on Indian and Tibetan commentaries on the sutra. So it felt to me as a good bridge between West and East. Now, I have to admit that reading this book was challenging and it revealed my unfamiliarity with Buddhism. What I learned from it and from other writings about the Heart Sutra is that it brings the idea that things we see, we hear, we smell, we feel and think are not the reality. Instead, they are all just a result of how our senses and our minds perceive them. It suggests that we see life through a filter of thoughts and concepts, and if we are not conscious about it, then we mistake these mental objects for reality. This makes very much sense to me when I look at it from a psychological perspective. Consider for a moment this scenario. You enter a dim room. You suddenly spot a snake lurking behind the door. Fear takes hold of you, your adrenaline rushes, and you run out of the room. As your heart races, you call for help. And when assistance arrives, it is revealed that it was merely a thick rope laying behind the door, not a snake. The entire fear and worry and even our bodily reactions were products of our senses and our thoughts, meaning that sometimes our fears and worries that we might suffer from have no tangible basis. The snake in this scenario could easily be replaced by any other topic closely related to our daily lives. I think that the concept of emptiness resonates with what many of us, including myself, at some moments experience in our lives. We might get caught up in a stream of thoughts that make us unhappy and insecure, while our thoughts actually are not reflecting reality. This concept of emptiness also implies that our current anger about something that happened in the past can be seen as anger for something that is not existing anymore because it happened in the past. So form is emptiness. On the other hand, our worries about the future can be seen as worries about something that does not exist yet or might even never exist. Then we can say emptiness is form. So by looking at it in this way, in both cases, our regrets about the past and our worries about the future are again constructions of the very thoughts and concepts that live in our minds. They do not exist in the reality of the present moment. Now, I was thinking that if there is a real snake in the room, I better recognize it and run. And if I don't plan for the future, I might not be able to pay my rent. These things would then be very real and tangible to me. However, what the Heart Sutra suggests, at least in my understanding, is that by realizing that our feelings, our thoughts, our consciousness, and so on are empty, we might choose to experience them with a more serene detachment, rather than getting caught up in them and even be ruled by them. I only spent a couple of weeks reading about the text, and these are just my first reflections, of course. Some people have spent decades of their lives studying this intriguing sutra to reveal its spiritual and philosophical meaning. That is why I'm happy to find books in English about the Heart Sutra that can provide context and guidance for its interpretation. Through reading about Buddhism and by visiting temples and museums in China, I've also learned a bit about the idea of constant change. And it relates closely with the profound concept of emptiness. From the teachings of the Buddha, we can learn that the essence of our lives is change, and with change comes suffering. One way to understand this goes as follows. If we can agree that life flows by and no two moments are the same, and if we can agree that people come into our lives and then they go away again because they move on or they pass away, or we can find success in our job and the next moment maybe the economy goes down and we lose our job, then it seems that this constant change is everywhere and it is therefore the way of nature. Now we suffer when we want to freeze time and hold on to the moments that we judge to be beautiful and good moments because they made us happy. But of course, it never works because of the constant change. And then we feel sad or dissatisfied with our lives, with our jobs, or with our relationships. We then try to bring back these good moments by doing things that bring back pleasure and happiness that we so desire. Maybe we even fall into the trap and search for substitutes for our happiness by trying to get satisfaction through excessive shopping or endless scrolling on our social media feeds, or by constantly seeking to do things that give us a mental kick, or by becoming addicted to our work. We then get into a mental treadmill, and then we live our lives on autopilot. The idea of constant change, suffering, and emptiness struck a chord with me, and I realized that it is not at all a bleak way of looking at life. It is rather the opposite. We could, of course, reason that if everything changes constantly, and because of it we suffer, and everything is emptiness, then we could choose to be cynical and say, if that is true, then why we bother in the first place? In this way, we can then choose to become pessimistic and see life as one big dystopian story. Or we might consider a more Buddhistic way of thinking, which makes us aware that there is another and positive way of looking at life. The Buddhist way of thinking implies that by accepting the fact of constant change, we have the opportunity to be much more aware of the present moment. And then we can live the present moment to the fullest. And we can gain happiness and peace of mind from it. When this started to sink in, it sounded very logic to me. Not living in the past, not worrying about the future, and fully living in the present sounds like a more than compelling choice. But then my question is, how do we do this? Because I found myself sometimes stuck in the past or in the future and might then step into a mental treadmill. For instance, although I somehow know that I should slow down in my work, at times I just don't. And I move from one cool project to another. And then my mind runs the risk of getting overloaded. If the windows in the buildings of the night skyline, as I observe it from my room in Nanjing, represent all my brain cells, and the flickering lights and cars in motion represent the information flowing between them, then when my brain is overloaded, it must look something like this, or even like this. At such moments, I feel that I'm no longer in charge of the deluge of thoughts and emotions that I experience, and somehow I then keep on functioning on autopilot, and in that way I might mentally exhaust myself. So the question I really would like to find the answer to is, how do I calm down the overexcited city lights in my brain? I found a possible answer to this question in this second book that I like to share with you. It is a manual to do exactly that. It is called Mindfulness in Plain English, and it is written by a Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka with an extraordinary career. His name is Bhante Gunaratana, and he has the incredible skill to explain how we can apply Buddhism in our daily lives without the need to become a monk or a nun. Now, Bhante Gunaratana, or Bhante Ji, as he is often called, belongs not to the Mahayana branch of Buddhism, but to the Theravada branch. Therefore, before we have a close look at his book, I want to bring you for a moment to another part of the Bao'en Temple that is related to precisely the Theravada tradition of Buddhism. This spectacular hall in the Bao'en Temple Museum contains printing plates and texts of the entire collection of Buddhist teachings called the Tripitaka Canon. These texts are essential to the Theravada branch of Buddhism. Just like in Christianity, different branches exist and they do not all have exactly the same selection of texts they see as part of the Buddhist canon. Right next to where the printing plates are exhibited, they made this beautiful Buddhist library-like exhibition room, where the full printed Tripitaka canon from the Theravada branch is stored. Exploring Buddhism in this way is a real treat. I also want to mention that the Tripitaka does not contain the Heart Sutra as part of its writings. Now let's have a closer look at a book by Bhante G. And let's focus on the concept of constant change and how we can avoid getting stuck in the treadmill of constant change by living more in the present. The key word here, according to Bhante G, is awareness, and more precisely, mindfulness. Instead of being controlled or being lived by our desires, emotions, and thoughts, he points out that we can instead try to understand ourselves better by becoming much more aware of our reality. And this brings us in a position to purge our minds from thoughts and feelings like anger, prejudice, pride, greed, and insensitivity. The book by Bhante G is a practical manual on how to learn to meditate and to calm our minds by consciously examining our feelings and thoughts without judging them. I never came across a book on the topic of meditation that really clicked with me, but this one certainly falls into place. The author explains a meditation form called Vipassana meditation, which should help us to look at something with clarity and precision and see the most fundamental reality of our life. He states that instead of seeing life through a screen of thoughts and concepts and to mistake these mental objects by reality, this method is created with the purpose to see reality exactly as it is, and therefore the method of perception he calls mindfulness. It is a very practical and insightful book, and it is now several weeks that I'm practicing and try to apply this method. And I must say that I experienced already some first beneficial effects. By being more aware of my breathing and of the train of thoughts in my head, I experienced that it is possible to replace, let's say, unproductive or negative thoughts with better ones. And it helps to be more focused on the present. Of course, I'm only taking baby steps here because the Vipassana meditation is so much more profound and has many more layers to it. But I feel I'm off at a good start. Both books that I wanted to share with you in this episode are the kind of books that I like to keep near to me, because reading them once is surely not enough. The first book, as mentioned, takes a deep dive into the philosophy of emptiness. And the second book is a true and very easy to understand manual how to become more aware of who we are and to become mindful about the present. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you find it useful. If you want to support me and you want me to create more content about books, then just press the subscribe button and leave a thumbs up or a comment. Hope to see you next time. Meanwhile, stay curious and stay free. Bye for now.